How's it going, people? And welcome back. This one's not called The Project. The project is over. I'm about to start a new mini-series for you guys, essentially documenting the post-prep period, going through the good, the bad, the ugly, all of the lessons that I've learned and the experiences that I've gone through over the last few weeks. And we're going to be calling this one The Aftermath. Now, first subject that we're going to be going through today is almost the ugly side of being shredded, the negatives of being shredded, and the considerations you need to put in place before going into a prep potentially. I think it's important for me to speak about this side because it can be idealized almost in terms of looking the way that I did, looking the way that a competitor or a lean photo shoot athlete does. And there are definite things that do crop up throughout that process that are a negative, that are big struggles and place a lot of challenge on a lot of different areas within your life, and that's what I want to go through today. So one of the biggest things that I struggled with was just the restrictive nature of dieting strictly itself. I'm a guy that loves to go out for dinner. I love to kind of meet up with friends. I love to go for dinner with my girlfriend. I love to do things outside of just training and sticking to your diet. That completely goes when you're going through this sort of process. Yes, you can get lean whilst still living a good life, but in order to get shredded, that's unrealistic. You're not going to get there by still having that flexibility, and ultimately mentally you don't even want to do that throughout the process. You want everything to be dialed in 100%. So if you can't track something properly, then you won't do it. If you can't stay in routine, then you won't do it. Anything that takes you out of that regimented daily structure is almost something that kind of stresses you out completely and you just can't do. And I can imagine that is only going to be proliferated more when I do actually compete, because the pressure there is going to be much greater, because I know that I'm going to be stepping on stage and competing against other people rather than just doing a photo shoot and competing against myself, essentially. So when going into any sort of serious goal like that, just almost prepare for the fact that you're about to go through a few months of not really being able to socialize, not being able to do those things that you do in normal day-to-day life. That can affect you, but that can also affect the people around you as well. Obviously, if you're in a relationship, being more restricted from kind of time with your friends and your family, maintaining your relationships can become quite tough. And I think that's something that you should almost communicate with those close people around you prior to going into it. So I actually sat down with Yasmin and I had a conversation with her prior to going into it, and I said, listen, like, this is what I'm about to do, this is what it's going to involve, and I want you to kind of know that prior to going into it, rather than all of a sudden kind of running into those challenges halfway through unexpectedly. And I think that's the biggest thing that I did, and that I'm happy I did, in terms of managing expectations, managing the people around me and their understanding of what I'm doing, because ultimately what we do is not normal. Dieting down to that level of body fat percentage is not normal. In kind of normal society, people don't really understand, especially if they haven't had any exposure to the fitness industry in general, but especially bodybuilding. It can seem like a really weird thing to be doing to yourself. You're essentially, in a controlled way, starving yourself for months on end. And that's another thing that I'm going to go into in a minute. But yeah, that's the first point. Just know what you're going into in terms of restrictiveness, and manage the expectations of the people around you from that standpoint. Leading on from that, in terms of nutrition, you are going to become more food focused. You are going to be hungry a lot of the time. You are going to place your relationship with food under more and more strain the further you go through. The lowest my calories got within that last week when we were depleting was 1,100, which for anyone is a very low amount of food, especially a guy. And we did what we had to do. Obviously, the result by the end of it was all worth it, but when you are pulling down in terms of food like that, or you are even dieting for prolonged periods of time, even if you're the kind of person that can have your calories a little bit higher, just the focus on having everything perfect, making sure that every calorie and every macronutrient is hit every single day for 12, 14, 16, 18, 20 weeks, you're going to be more focused on food. And you have to be in order to do what we do. But at the same time, that can have a negative impact on your relationship with food, especially post-diet. That's something I'm going to do a separate video on within the Aftermath series, in terms of my experiences post prep in terms of my relationship with food and how I actually dealt with that, and the lessons I learned, the challenges I faced, and how I overcome them. Just know you're going to be hungry. That's a harsh reality. You can do as much as you can to mitigate that. You can eat as many high volume foods as possible, use as many diet hacks as possible, but you are going to be hungry, and that is the harsh reality. So just know that, again, prior to going into it. Another big point that people don't speak about is actually your sex drive. Especially as a natural athlete, I can't speak for assisted athletes in terms of how they feel during a prep, down to the fact that they have exogenous hormones coming on board, but as far as the people that I've spoke to, it doesn't really change from a natural to an unnatural athlete, down to the fact that you are going to be very tired, you're going to be very fatigued, your body is going to be under a lot of stress, and that has an impact mentally in terms of just your desire to do that in the first place, because by the time you get to the evening, you're just tired, you want to go to sleep, right? B, from a physiological perspective, again, as a natural athlete, you are going to have a big impact on your natural hormone production. Being in a very restrictive caloric environment, being in a very stressed environment for a long period of time is the perfect recipe to completely tank your testosterone levels and to just, again, put you in that state where your sex drive is very low. And again, that's another thing that ties into that relationship thing of managing that with your partner. The last thing you want to do is kind of come out the other end of a prep having looked the best that you have in your life, but without the relationship you went into it with, because you haven't managed these things. And again, something that people don't really speak about because it's a bit of a taboo subject, but it's important, right? And again, it's something to note, and it's something to understand the implications of from a health perspective. Like, what you do is not healthy. Being that percentage of body fat is not healthy from any aspect, let alone from your natural hormone production. Obsession over your body image, that's another thing. Like, what we're doing is 100% visual, right? So there is that focus every single day of how am I looking? How am I feeling? You look in yourself in the mirror more. Like, everyone that's been through a diet knows that every single mirror you walk past, you're quickly checking to see whether you've got leaner or not. You will be taking progress pictures more regularly than ever. You will be critically analysing your physique, not just looking at a picture of yourself, but you'll be critically analysing and looking at, right, I need to lose a bit more body fat here. Am I seeing this come in a little bit more? Am I progressing at the right rate? There's that constant self-analysis. And again, it's needed, but it can be a struggle. It can be a challenge because it is overly self-critical. We are our own worst self-critic as well. And especially if you start to become more stressed about how you're looking than positive, it can be tough, and that will have an overall negative impact on your progress itself in terms of just managing that whole mindset. So again, that's something that I've focused on a lot with myself, and something I focus a lot with clients as well, actually putting things in place to manage how stressed they are about the progress that they are making, and reassuring them that they're getting closer to the goal at the right time frame and going in the right direction. Almost encouraging people not to overanalyze themselves. Try to not look at yourself in the mirror multiple times per day. Maybe have like a check-in once per week or once every few days, depending on what phase you're in, and send those pictures to your coach, have them analyze it. Don't do too much of that yourself. And it's much, much easier said than done. I don't think anyone would do that. And then there's the general energy and knock-on effect on training performance. Throughout the majority, I was actually fairly fine in terms of training. Like, my motivation to train definitely dropped down to the fact that I had less energy reserves. But once I was in there, I was in that environment, I have the intrinsic love for training that just drives me on anyway. I was fine in terms of training performance, probably up until the 4-5 week out mark. I really started to feel it. That's when we started to push fairly hard as well to bring me in the condition that I did. That's obviously the point where cardio was highest, steps were highest, and food was lowest. So you're generally going to have less fuel reserves on board, and your training performance is going to start taking a hit. You're going to start dropping strength towards the back end of a prep. And as much as you can do everything in your power to stop that from happening, it's a likelihood that that will happen. And it's a tough mindset to battle, because you need to go into every session cutting that off completely and saying, right, I have no reason why I can't continue to progress and train at a good intensity here. But the harsh reality is you will just see drops in terms of strength, or a complete plateau in terms of your strength progression. So again, like, making sure that you're doing everything in your power to not let that happen, but understanding that that is a fairly normal part of the process within those very latter stages when body fat is very low, expenditure is high, food is very low as well. And then that brings me on to the last point, just in terms of how you feel in general throughout the day. You will spend a lot of your life fairly miserable towards the back end. You're not going to feel great. You're not going to have a lot of energy. You're going to feel very fatigued. Your legs are going to feel heavy. You're going to wake up in the morning and think, how the fuck am I going to do this all over again? How am I going to get X amount of cardio in? How am I going to get X amount of steps in? How am I going to fit this training session in? How am I going to only eat X amount of calories again? And you just wake up and you do it because the goal is important. The goal is valuable. You are obsessed over doing everything possible to get where you want to go, and how you feel almost doesn't matter throughout those last kind of periods, because you know it's necessary and you know it's a part of you becoming the best version of yourself from a physical aspect, and you will grow massively from pushing through those days and pushing through those prolonged periods of time where you really do not feel good. But the mind is a lot stronger than the body, and that's one thing that I learned a lot. No matter how fatigued I was, I still woke up, I still got the work done. But it's not enjoyable. Like you will feel shit, and if you're not feeling shit towards the back end, then you're probably not in the right position. If you're very, very low in terms of body fat and you're where you need to be, you're gonna feel those feelings. So again, just know that before going into it. Expect it, do as many things to help with that as possible, sleep well, recover hard, look at managing stress from all aspects. But other than that, just know that it's gonna feel fairly shit, and that's what we put ourselves through, and that's one of the most rewarding parts of it in terms of being able to push through, as I said. So hopefully that gives you a good insight into the other side of dieting, the other side of the project. And as I said at the beginning, I think it's really important for us to be openly communicating about the good but also the bad. With social media itself, it's quite easy to have the perfect picture all the time and to see only the positives, and to then have that as a negative comparison for yourself, because if you're looking at everyone else and thinking they're finding this easy, they're feeling good, like I don't understand why I'm struggling so much. I don't want you guys to have that. I want you guys to understand exactly what struggles I do go through and did go through and will go through in the future, and I'll be openly communicating about those things moving forward in every single series that I do. And I hope that kind of comes across in a good way. I think it's a tough balancing act for me in my head mentally, in terms of like not coming across like I'm wanting sympathy, because I'm not. That's not what I'm doing. It's that open honesty that is important, that hopefully will benefit you guys and also benefits me as well, in terms of just being open about the whole picture. I hope you enjoyed. I hope that was valuable. Any questions at all, as always, just fire them in the comments. I'm always open to chatting in the DMs on Instagram as well, so just fire me a message on there. And as much as it's a different series, we've still got the same ending. Do all that YouTuber stuff. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.
24 hours in a day, what the fuck you gonna say? Pick a lane, man, you gotta choose one. It's what they used to tell me every day, caught a few along the way.